afternoon, everyone. Welcome back after lunch. We've got a smorgasbord of delights for you this afternoon in our Heritage and Wellbeing seminar. So I hope you've left some sort of space after lunch to fill you up with everything we're going to share with you this afternoon. I'm Jonathan Webster. I'm Professor of Practice Development, working with the Norfolk Initiative for Coastal and Rural Health Equalities at UEA. Joining me this afternoon we have Colin Howie from MensCraft, Esther Watts from NHS Sussex Integrated Care Board, Holly Sanderford, Creative Evaluator, and Rosalind Hewitt from Norwich Museums. We've structured this afternoon's seminar around 3 short presentations, giving you a flavour of work that we are all leading in our respective areas, linking heritage and well-being. A personal reflection of mine from this morning's sessions that I've been in is my brain is sort of doing acrobatics because I'm thinking about everything that I've experienced this morning and how that can link to future sort of iterative development of work that I'm leading across niche. So what we're going to be presenting to you, or sharing with you, I think is work that is evolving, growing, developing, shaping. And certainly I've got some thoughts about where I'm going to be taking the work that I'm doing sort of from the future based on learning from this morning. Between each presentation, we've introduced a pit stop activity, hence the creative materials in front of you, to co-create a creative response to the presentations you will have just seen, which are going to be led by Rosalind and Holly. So let's start. Our first presenter is Colin, so I'm going to hand over to you, Colin.
I hope is this mic working? I've got a really big mouth anyway, so it doesn't matter if I am. I'll try the other one. Let's just give it a go. There. Is that working? Oh, well, never mind. I'll use the big mouth instead. Okay, so my name's Colin, or as my daughters would call me, Poundland Ray Winston. Don't know where they got the piss-taking genes from. So today I work for a charity called MensCraft, and our overall aim is to nurture and empower gentler men, gentler with themselves, gentler with others. It's promoting positive masculinity and kind of well-being throughout the life course, encouraging the guys to learn to be comfortable with themselves, to love themselves, and altering that relationship with themselves to one of compassion, so that then they give that to those around them. That's the kind of broad aim. My part of what we do is the Norwich Pit Stop project. See the pit stop? It takes the metaphor of men and cars. Some of us are old bangers like me, but we've got room in our parking lot for shinier, younger models. As men, we're often terrible at the valeting, and the oil change gets put off forever, but historically what we've been really resistant to is lifting up the bonnet and letting others see the engine. And so we kind of use that metaphor and put it into action by a whole series of meaningful activities, including history health walking, and I kind of lead that. I've had a hand in heritage for, my word, nearly 25 years. And I was a Johnny-come-lately to the kind of heritage world. I had a very non-traditional approach, kind of journey to it via homelessness, complex trauma as a kid, all sorts of stuff. And then I arrived in the lovely world of museums. And I worked for Norfolk Museum Service. Hello, John, by the way, nice to see you there. And so hence my kind of interest in it. And then I looked it up today. It was 16 years ago that the Foresight report on mental capital and wellbeing was first published, and then very soon after that the New Economic Foundation kind of turned that into a public mental health message around the 5 ways to wellbeing: to connect socially, to be active, to take notice, to keep learning, and to give. And very quickly I started playing with those as a wellbeing activist. And one of the things I did is founded a community history club that put that into action. So there's a kind of a bit of a continuity of my work with this stuff, really. Because I'm really nervous, I have imposter syndrome, I need notes, so I'm going to be looking at these from time to time. So first of all, one of the things I think I'd like to say is coming as I do from outside of the traditional world of heritage, I felt, when I first got to it, I found it very posh in accent, very kind of intimidating, and I was suddenly working with loads of people with PhDs and all this, and I was like, wow. And I think it's really useful to be aware of that accent, the fact that it tends to be historically older people, it tends to be white, and all of that is part of the whole package. So how do we disarm that? How do we start to connect with people? I trained with the National Association of Interpretation, the North American professional body, as a certified guide. And part of the techniques they were looking at was exploring communication theory and looking at relate. How do we relate the past to where we are now? And we would do all sorts of things like use intrigue objects, a grab bag, get people to pull that out. And I remember doing a tour of Norwich Cathedral where I worked with a nutritionist, and it was a thing called Monk's Meals and What We Eat Now, which was a really interesting exploration of food history. But I started with New Year's resolutions, and I said, anyone ever made a New Year's resolution? Has anyone ever made a New Year's resolution? Hands up. Okay, hands down. Has anyone ever broken a New Year's resolution? Yeah, me too. And then I related to the Benedictine rule and the way the monks would blatantly breaking all their rules so they could stuff their bellies. So that's just one example of that. And also it's about sometimes universal themes. It's the big stuff. It's about embedding friendship, loss, justice, love, bravery, things that people can relate to in their own lives, that are cross-cultural in many instances. So in MensCraft, for instance, one of the walks, when I was doing the history walk a while ago, I related a personal story, because our stories are heritage and history too, especially at my age. And I was recounting down at Paul's Ferry in Norwich, which is a lovely bit of the river, where when I was 26 years old, which is a long time ago now, I jumped into the river to try and rescue a man who'd waded into the water and disappeared. I eventually got him out of there, but unfortunately he died that night. And I ended up with a bravery award. And I always felt I didn't deserve it because I just did it without thinking. But then I told him about the first brave thing, the thing I felt was the first brave thing. I'm from a boxing family, and I was a pretty dangerous teenager, to be honest, to be around, apparently. And I was a lethal weapon, as my deputy headmaster once described me. And basically, I told them the story of how, when I first moved to Norwich, I decided this was a chance to change. And I heard a fight going on outside where I was living. I went and broke up the scrap like that, and then I realised the drunk geezer was going to hit me. And for the first time in my life, I let someone hit me. Couldn't punch a toffee, fortunately. I let him hit me, and I said, look, you've done it now, mate, off you go, and off he went. And I walked away from that feeling 10 foot tall. That, for me, was a really brave thing. And it's that kind of sometimes weaving in our own stories, and there's a kind of modelling the behaviour sometimes that I think is really powerful in this. We also can connect, there's a very contemporary way we can connect the past with the present. COVID, plague. So that would be one that we've used recently. We're also looking at stuff like basically empowering people to read their historic environment, give them a toolkit so that they can then start to go, oh, why is that bend in that road? What's that river? Why is that river wider there than it is there? What's that name mean? And it's giving them those toolkits so they can actually start to actively engage with their environment, their historic environment. And I think part of that is about constructing that sense of meaning and belonging and actually becoming an active citizen within your environment, which is a really important part of wellbeing. I also talked about the 5 ways to wellbeing from time to time. I don't tend to say, hey, come on my history health walks and do wellbeing, because if I did that, I don't think anyone else would be around, would they? They would just clear off. So basically what I tend to do is just embed it and then reveal it and say, do you feel a bit better now? We've done the connection, we've done the be active, we've done the take notice, and that seems to work really well. And I do realise I've done this the wrong way around, and my activity is going to be at the end of this bit now. Okay. There's also the be active. With the health walking, it really helps for our guys to get shoulder to shoulder. I think blokes in particular are often quite locked up. They often need to move to think, and just by that process of walking, they will naturally open up more as they're walking. But really important that after, everything we do in MensCraft ends with a cup of tea. Some of the members of MensCraft say that my job is drinking tea and talking shit. So that's my specialism. I also think that it's really important that some of our guys, their heads are like a ransacked library, and to take them to beauty and to say, hey, come here and take your shoes off. And then I'll explain ionisation and say that's actually helping you align your energies. All sounds a bit hippish, but it does work. Slow down. Let's do some breathing together in this environment. So eventually, from taking them to places where there's a beautiful little garden here, there's a lovely little vista there, they get their own mental map that they can then tap into in their daily lives. So it has that very practical effect and impact on their well-being. They have their chill spaces, in other words. And also, I think that culturally, we're very fixed on the visual and the auditory. One of the things we will do sometimes in our history walking is use the range of that. It might be a garden that has scent, so we would shut our eyes and smell. It's thinking through those senses. I have on occasions brought food along, so sometimes it's taste as well. So I think that's really important. So it's about that coming alive, isn't it? It's about that whole person. It's about that holistic health and that sort of, that growth really. Okay, so I think another thing I want to talk about is, the participation. Not everybody is wired the same way. So one of our members, he would stand to the side of things and just kind of be on his phone a lot. And he did say to me, I'm autistic, so it did add stuck up that he wasn't necessarily connected, but he kept on coming back. And he was getting a lot from it. I wasn't quite sure what it was. Then one day, if I have any expertise, it's about misbehaviour in the Tudor and Stuart period, and the modern period as well. And basically, one of my favourite books is Thy Father is a Gore-Bellied Codpiece, which is create over 100,000 of your own Shakespearean insults. And I got up and I said, I'm going to insult you, sir. You countless fat-kidneyed abomination. Sorry, I can't take it personally. And you cuckoldy, senseless, obstinate codpiece. Oh dear. Anyway, I said, anyone else want to go? And Jay grabbed it from me and suddenly, really animatedly, said, you apish ball-pated geck, or whatever he came up with. And he loved it. And I realised, okay, that's his way in. That's his thing. So sometimes it's about just having stuff available, and if something's going to connect. And so now I make sure that Jay gets a stage from time to time, and that's what we offer. We offer those opportunities. We had an actor in our group as well, so he would do performances and readings, and he had a real gift for accents. And there was a wonderful bit in Norwich Market where he was doing a 17th century Puritan rant, and this poor woman with a trolley went past and thought she was seeing some kind of religious revival meeting going on. So wonderful moments like that occur. Another thing we've done recently is this idea of participation and theming, with the theme of love, which is a beautiful thing to be talking about. We structured the whole walk around love, and it was around love stories, lovely places. But one of the places we went to in Norwich was St Stephen's Church, which heads to the shopping centre nearby. And it's been calculated that on average, 50,000 people walk past that church every day on their way to do the modern religion of shopping and consumerism. But hardly anyone, I bet, knows that they're walking past a little tablet set into the buttress of the wall that records the loss of 5 children and a family, 2 parents that outlived their children. And it's a really poignant, painful reminder, because sometimes the light goes with the shade. But my intrigue object for that walk was a bunch of daffodils. They all kept saying, what you got them for? And I said, this is why I've got them, because we're going to now pay tribute and honour all of this feeling, this love, all of this here. And we went to the back of the church and placed some daffodils on the grave markers as a kind of tribute. We did another one. It's really important for some of our guys to get out of the city. So we've done some amazing visits to places like the ancient woodland at Staverton in Suffolk, which has the biggest concentration of ancient oaks in Western Europe. We've done another one which was, again, a bit death-themed here, sorry to be a bit dark, but we went to Windham Cemetery. And I wanted to talk about memory and loss, and so we were looking at the inscriptions, we were asking the big questions. Do we need to be remembered? How are we remembered? How would we wish to be remembered? And as part of that, I read out, we have a brilliant course called Growth Mindset, and as part of that shifting of your relationship with yourself, we're encouraged to write our own eulogy, which is an interesting process. And I'd written mine, so I shared that with them, and it was just a kind of little nudge to the guys to say, hey, you might want to have a go at this reframing of yourself and valuing yourself, because it's also about often me saying, you're brilliant what you said, and teaching guys to take a compliment, which is a really important skill, because often they'll bat it away. So yeah, that was a really good one. And at the end, there is a museum link here. There was a wonderful museum head of education at the castle called Katrina Siliprandi, who died before her time. When I think of Katrina, I think of smiles and the colour purple. And I wrote a poem for her. And basically we placed that on her grave because she's buried in Windham Cemetery. So it's really great sometimes to get creative and just to, as guys as well, to talk about this stuff, to get it out there and talk about the feelings as well. I think in terms of the sort of the wider stuff around the well-being, I think one of the really important things about it is the meta skill of generic flexibility. It's about getting people to start to make changes, to realise that if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. You need to do something different to get something different. And that can start with small changes. That can start with going somewhere you've never been before, going to a museum, for instance. Some of the guys have never been there before. Well, we have a pit stop membership card to encourage that sense of belonging in a tangible form. But this will also get you, and a massive credit to Norfolk Museum Service, this will get into any Norfolk Museum Service museum for free across the county. And so that's a really nice kind of way that we've done some partnership work with heritage organisations. We also have great relationships with the libraries and archives, so we'll go and do sessions, sometimes bespoke sessions in the local libraries, which is fantastic and supports guys and makes them feel special. That's really important. Sometimes we can take this stuff for granted, can't we? But sometimes when you encounter a beautiful old book that's 600 years old, or a lovely room that you would never normally see, it's an amazing thing. And I think sometimes it's just reminding ourselves about those fresh eyes. And I think overall, before I do the activity, overall I think what I would like to say is that well-being is a positive state. Basically, the World Health Organisation definition of health says that explicitly. It isn't simply an absence of illness. It is about you activating yourself and getting something back from it. And the 5 ways of wellbeing are a great way to do that, and it's a great toolkit for resilience. But it's also about having a space where you may have been coming through mental health services, drug and alcohol support, homeless charities, whatever, and you could easily define yourself by the pathology. What we're offering is those non-pathologised spaces where you can just be you and not be judged, to be heard, seen, valued, respected. And one of the really magic things about MensCraft World for me, and I've gone on this journey too, is we believe in each other, and there's massive growth in that. So I'm very indebted to our members for that, for me. By the way, I swam for the first time in over 30 years. as a result of the members, seeing them stepping up and doing things. I got in a swimming pool and I swam a really splashy freestyle like a doggy paddle, but I did it because I was inspired by the members. So that's a good example for me of how I'm on that journey too, inspired by them. So that's me reflecting a bit about the history of health walks and what we do, and some of my thoughts about it. I've got more. But I want to sort of get you moving a little bit, which I should have done at the start, but I cocked it up. But hey, let's go with it. So, I want to ask a question. Who built this building? Where did it start?
I think probably with the Chancellor as usual meeting.
Yes, wonderful. I'm guessing your name is Adam.
Gee whiz.
Yeah.
Must be something.
Come on, Adam. Out the front here. Adam is a MensCraft member and a plant, by the way. So, Chancellor, you can be Chancellor for today.
Thank you.
You stand here, sir. Okay, we're going to have a bit of a hierarchy here. So, you have your meeting. Anyone else involved in that meeting, do you think?
Oh yes, it'll be the people who proposed it, having the architects for it.
You said architect. Okay, someone called Nadia in here. Is there a Nadia? Hey, what a good guess. Nadia, come and join the line. You're an architect for the moment. So you've had your meeting, you've got your spec, you've got your brief. What happens next? You've got the land. Let's assume you've got the land. What happens next, folks? What has to happen? And no one ever works on a building site. Okay, I'm going to volunteer. You're going to need some, I used to be a labourer, so you're going to need someone to help do the footings and all the groundwork, and I'm arbitrarily going to choose, I seem to know a lot of people in this room, John, because he's a big strapping fellow, he could do the shovel and crash a digger.
Yeah.
Right, get in a line, because this is a hierarchy. Okay, so the interesting thing about this building, one of the interesting things, is it's a passive house design building, which is a carbon neutral construction. And have you noticed any of the materials in this building? Okay, you're nodding.
Yeah, I was thought Phil Ward was joking about thatched, moving away from thatch, and then I looked up in there and saw this thatch.
Yeah. There's bundles of straw, basically, and hay, or whatever you I'm an urban boy, so I don't know what to call this.
Reeds.
Reeds.
Yeah.
And, let's have a look. Those reeds, I think, they are from locally sourced from the Broads, I believe. Because you're not sitting on the end, but you are, sir, come and join the line. What other materials have we got? What do we need as well? We've done the groundwork, we're getting the reeds together for the bundles.
A lot of wood.
There is, who said that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to nominate you at the end there with the glasses, because you're at the end. You can come and be one of the carpenters. And it's a timber frame constructed building as well, with locally sourced oak as well. So, yeah, great job. You've done a brilliant job here. Mate, amazing. Is there anything else that you've noticed or you think would go into the building of this? Has there been anything that needed bonding together?
Bricks.
It might be brick, but what would actually do the bonding? Lime water, did someone say? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, you are. Come on. You're a cement mixer, shoveling in materials. It's great work. It's really tiring work, by the way. I used to do it, as I said. I'm going to just tell you also that another material somewhere, and it's your task after this to go and explore, there is flint. It is Norfolk, East Anglia, and it's locally sourced. So the flint, I think, came from Holt. So I'm going to need a lorry driver. You're my lorry driver. Yes, please. Come down. If when we're doing this at the cathedral and someone said the bishop built this and then we get to the line, eventually we get to the oxen and all the rest of it. But one of the things, sometimes it can be if it's building, it can be a very male line historically. So we can explore that a bit further by saying, what did you eat today and who cooked your meal, who was making your clothes, and you can extend that line outwards. Why? I'm not going to go, I think we're getting the point here, aren't we? Yeah. Why have I done this? What does it tell us?
It's kind of like the social hierarchy of decision making and all the people who are more visible and all the people that are kind of doing the work and the people supporting the people doing the work who have the skills but they're not so involved in the process. Although they'll be making micros. My partner's a carpenter and actually he has to sort out all the things that the architect's got wrong when he actually gets to build the thing. So, yeah.
Brilliant answer. So it is about taking the visible and showing the invisible. There is a geography often to it as well. It's really interesting. This geography, that's all Norfolk materials here because of that carbon zero. But often, if you were talking about Norwich Cathedral, it would involve, there was an Arabic mason involved in the building of Norwich Cathedral, for instance. So, and materials from France and all over. So it's a really expansive. And I developed this. I stole the basic idea from a brilliant museum educator called Francis Sauld from the Fitzwilliam Museum. And then I adapted it because I was asked to develop a tour for Norwich Cathedral as a freelancer for disinterested teenage boys. And so I realised that boys, me too, need to move to think. We were just having a conversation about that, weren't we? And so this was part of that process. At the time, the tallest footballer in the Premiership was Peter Crouch at 6'7" high. So I did a bit of embedded maths about estimating how many Peter Crouch's height the spire of Norwich Cathedral was. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
So you'll notice, I'm part of a project with the Museum Service, which we're doing some creative valuation. And I kind of wanted to do like a little creative valuation sort of technique with you and to introduce you to the ways that we're working with this project. It's very embedded, and we want little evaluation techniques that don't stand out, that are kind of very individual, relate to the sort of session that we've been doing. And because you've been doing something about houses and buildings, you've got like a little house and building. And because also Colin was talking about the 5 ways of wellbeing, I thought that's also a really nice way to evaluate his session. So I'm actually going to get you to evaluate what you've just done just now with Colin, just because I think it's better, it makes more sense rather than doing it. So it's really, so you've got your little house here. So if you, can you see, like, start folding it up and see if I can make a little house? So this is actually the roof here at the top. So you might want to start by folding that down. You can see it's the roof. And the little fold lines here, they fold down as well. I think we need to say thank you to the museum, like,
Oh yeah, our front staff cut these out. 70 of them, yeah.
And also, when we're evaluating, it's nice to give people different ways to respond. So you can, I mean, some of these things we won't have kind of touched on all the 5 ways of wellbeing being in Colin's little session, but you may have like taken notice of things. He's asked you to sort of look around the room and look a bit differently. You probably haven't given anything. You may have made a little bit of connection, and he did get people to be active, which is lovely as well. And I've definitely learned something, so I've learned like a new technique. So you can either respond in writing, so you can maybe say a word that relates to connection or to being active, or you could do like a smiley face, you could just put a tick or a cross, or you could do a drawing, however you like. But I would do that before you stick it together, because it's quite hard to find something that wouldn't fill in the house. Is everyone managing? And you've got grit sticks in front of you, hopefully. And it might be nice even just to like quickly speak to the person next to you about what you're doing as well, and then you can sort of add a little element of connection as well. Yes. About what how you're going to respond.
getting new land, or discovered?
I didn't know about that.
And there's no sort of formal right way to do it as well. And if you did want to be a bit more kind of direct in how you're kind of gathering your information, you could have a scale, you could have a smiley face across, you could have that already.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
But today we're going to be quite free. And I think it's quite nice to give people lots of different options in terms of how they get it as well.
The idea of taking a group of men and going, close your eyes and breathe in. It's like, how many would get you? It's interesting. It's great that it works, because it's not the kind of thing I just have confidence to do. Without somebody saying, no, trust me, they'll go with you on this.
I always try to picture different people that I know going through these things and what they're
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah, I think I'd be quite surprised if I went on the cathedral tour and doing a bit of sensory stuff or ate something or smelled something that I liked.
I was also thinking about how I never
And actually, in terms of like the 5 ways of well-being as well, when we sort of design and create evaluation activities, one thing you don't want to do is like lower the mood. So actually quite a lot of things like surveys and different ways of gathering feedback can actually just like, because I run sessions, arts and well-being sessions.
Yeah, it's not something you can do.
only if somebody's
At the end, if you've got surveys, something actually it's like, oh, it's just really rubbish. Like, we're like constantly having surveys, all sorts of things, by emailing all the time. So it's just nice to find there's different ways of gathering information from people.
Like Mum came to
Don't
stay
track
with me
the
last week,
session.
so we did a sort of
In the last
staycation
session I
around
was in,
Norfolk and
about
Suffolk and went out to places that
archives.
you know on your doorstep.
They
Unless
used
you've got a
a
reason.
nice term
Yeah.
ladies in here actually. It was photo voice. And it's like, this is someone's voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's their feedback. And
Yes, definitely.
you can take a photo of it as a record or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways. And we'll, in a little while we'll show you some sort of more examples of ways to do this. And I don't know if you want to probably, if everyone would be happy to, you want to get started with it.
So I'm one of these presenters. I'm just thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to follow Colin? So, as Colin said right at the start, we're not bothered about titles, and we're genuinely not, so I'm going to zip on from this covering slide. I'm just going to share with you in 10 minutes, just very quickly, about some of the work that we're doing in Niche, so the Norfolk Initiative for Coastal and Rural Health Equalities. We're an anchor institute at UEA, and we're delivering our work across the Norfolk and Waveney integrated care system through Niche. And our key focus is around improving outcomes through addressing what matters to people and their communities. So to say, as an anchor institute, each of the 6 HEIs in the East of England were awarded funding to become anchor institutes. We were awarded funding from what is now, it was Health Education England, now NHS England, to really support the development of integrated care systems in each of our sort of geographic patches. We have 4 themes that we are working to within Niche. Firstly, our focus is around improving health inequalities across rural and coastal communities. We've touched on this morning, we've heard this morning about some of the real challenges that people living in coastal communities face. The Chris Whitty report of about sort of 3 years ago highlighted some of those sort of key issues, but also across rural communities as well. And for us in Norfolk, Norfolk is a significantly rural and coastal system, and there are many sort of different elements around health inequalities. Our second theme is around supporting workforce development and transformation. If we think about workforce across our Norfolk and Waveney system, probably about 50%, if not 55% of our landmass is circled by sea. So there are significant challenges, specifically if I look at this through the lens of health and care around sort of workforce recruitment and developing a workforce that really sort of works across these sort of significantly sort of challenged areas. Our third theme is around system collaboration and transformation through effective partnership working. And what's buzzing about in my brain is from this morning, looking at this through the lens of health and well-being, is what I know and what I've heard so loudly this morning is around the intrinsic link between heritage, health and well-being. And how do we form more collaborative partnerships, sustained partnerships that aren't sort of get blown apart at the next reorganisation, that are absolutely embedded in how we work across our systems. And also our fourth theme is around supporting and enabling well-being and sustainability of everything that we do. For Niche, we've got 4 work streams. This is just to tell you sort of what they are. The one I'm going to specifically focus on and just share some examples with you on is work stream 3, which is workforce optimisation. So really optimising sort of well-being. But this is just to give you a flavour of those 4 work streams. So this slide just sort of captures some of the programmes of work that we're supporting through Niche. So supporting through embedded research and evaluation activity. And we explicitly talk about the embeddedness of our work. So we are really clear that we don't do to people, we work with people. We work with people and communities. We work with people in the complexity of the world in which we live and work within. Hence our very strong focus around the embeddedness of all our work, because we know that's where the greatest opportunity for sustainability will happen, is actually if we embed everything that we do by working with people. So one of our key work streams I've mentioned is Workforce Intelligence Network. So very simply, we're putting together a whole mass of data and information around workforce, specifically across health and care sectors, into one place, so we have a better understanding about what our workforce needs will be in the future. We're developing 2 innovation development units called Theo, working with the James Paget Hospital in Great Yarmouth and Norfolk community, specifically looking at evaluating the impact of practice development, which is about transforming the context and culture of care and practices through sort of specific evaluation activity. We're focusing on what we're calling 3 R's, so recruitment, retention and retainment of our workforce, which is so significant. So we talk about the importance of recruitment, that's really key, but it's then how we retain our workforce. It's about then the retention of our workforce and the retainment of our workforce going into the future. We're funding an evaluation around psychology-led staff wellbeing initiative being led by the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in King's Lynn. As a trust during the COVID pandemic, they introduced psychological support for staff, which had a huge impact, and they've continued delivering that service. So we're actually supporting them with a formal evaluation. We're funding an evaluation of student interdisciplinary Schwartz rounds. So Schwartz rounds are about an opportunity about learning from experiences from practice and through reflection, and we're actually supporting this through Norwich School of Medicine, which is being led by UEA. I'm going to share with you 4 examples of our fellowships, and we're also supporting embedded scholarship programme with 3 cohorts being led by the James Paget Hospital. And again, this is across the whole integrated care system, so bringing people together from health and care who are right at the very start of their journeys around evaluation and research. We're going to share with you examples of 4 embedded research. We're calling Kintsugi programs. Anyone aware of Kintsugi? Has anyone heard of Kintsugi? Kintsugi is the Japanese art of bringing together broken pieces of china, but bringing together them and reforming them with gold to make something that was beautiful even more beautiful. So we're using the metaphor of Kintsugi to describe these programs. We funded 1 art fellowship. We're funding 2 arts and humanities fellowships. We're supporting a graduate programme being led by the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, again, King's Lynn, to test proof of concept around what we know is probably about 18 months after registration. Registrants tend to move on, so people working within health, professional qualification tend to move on. This is about how we support them in their development to actually stay in our Norfolk and Waveney system. We're funding 3 match-funded mini-Konsugis, and we're also leading the evaluation of the Anchor Institutes across the east of England. Rosie, you doing that to me?
Yeah, you've got about 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. That's an improvement on the past, so that's always good. So this is just to give you a flavour of our fellowship grants that we're supporting. So one of our fellows is based at Norfolk Hospice at Tapping House, and their focus of their fellowship is around improving the end-of-life care pathway across West Norfolk place locality. We're funding a fellow who works for Norfolk Community Healthcare, so their fellowship is focusing on their Norfolk antenatal pathway for women and birthing people with learning disabilities. And Anchor, who is our fellow, has been awarded from the Chief Nursing Officer for England. She's been awarded NHS 75-year award for celebration of her research, which is phenomenal. We're supporting Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust in producing a child holistic rural and coastal health passport called Coracle. And Bonnie, who's our fellow who's leading this, is really embedding herself in coastal and rural communities. And what is really transformational about this work is not only the work that she's doing in Norfolk, but the stretch this work is having. So she's about to head off to the University of British Columbia in North Canada, because what they've identified working with her is that there is similarities and themes around children and young people, adolescents in these communities who have real issues around accessing sort of mental health services. And the themes, although geographically, clearly North Canada is huge compared to North Norfolk, but the Inuit communities, there are similar themes that reach across into what we're doing, and what she's leading is reaching across into their work, which is, you know, really exciting. And also James Paget, again, we're supporting them, testing their work around early mobilisation. These fellowships feel very health-centric, which they are, and what's going through my mind is where we are almost 2 years down the line with Niche. What would this look like through the lens of heritage, through communities? You know, these are community-based, but what could this really sort of look like going forward? And again, these are some of the Kintsugi programs that we're funding, so supporting evaluation of. So one of them is a program called Take a Chance on Me. It's a community interest company based in Great Yarmouth, who work with people who don't have a fixed home to help them try and find employment. So they've never had the opportunity to really formally evaluate their programme of work, which is truly transformational. If any of you are from Great Yarmouth or in the Great Yarmouth area, they have a charity shop that they've recently taken on and are raising funds to support their charity. And again, it's really transformational work, it's fabulous. Supporting the School of Pharmacy at UEA around early prescribing. Holly and Rosalind are going to share us a very quick example in a minute around their work around Norwich Museums, which is supporting evaluation of, and we're also supporting work with the School of Social Work at UEA to support the retention of health and social care professionals in Norfolk. Holly, it's you.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jonathan and Colin. Hi, my name is Rosalind, and I'm a Learning and Engagement Officer for Norfolk Museum Service, and I work across the 3 museums in Norwich. So that's Norwich Castle Museum and Art Gallery, the Museum of Norwich, and Strangers Hall. And this is Holly.
Hi, my name is Holly Sanderford, so I'm an artist, a creative evaluator, and I also run a non-for-profit which uses arts and heritage to improve wellbeing and sort of mental health. Yeah,
so we're here to talk to you today about a programme that I run that Holly works on called Community Culture Club. So Community Culture Club is a museum creative wellbeing programme for older adults, inclusive of those living with dementia, carers, those with other long-term health conditions, and those who are lonely or socially isolated. The programme runs for 10 sessions. It's a fixed-term intervention, November to February, so the kind of darkest, coldest time of the year. And we've worked with 3 cohorts of participants to date, and I'm currently recruiting for our next cohort, which is really exciting. The Community Culture Club aims to support people's wellbeing by
decreasing feelings of loneliness, creating new social connections, delivering activities designed with joy at their core, treating people as sensory beings, which Colin actually mentioned earlier in his work, and using history to connect to our present day selves. It's not a reminiscence group. We're not looking to trigger memories or get people to remember things, but we're using, medieval history and how it resonates with us today. And the programme is grounded in several key delivery commitments to achieve those aims. So sensory engagement, we ensure that multiple senses are engaged in every session, providing opportunities for participants to taste, touch, smell, look and listen. We do a session all about chocolate and we get to taste lots of chocolate, which is always great. Practical, each session culminates in a creative intervention in art making and everyone's encouraged to have a go. And we like the interventions to be kind of messy and tactile. We use clay, watercolours, different paints, textiles, and we really encourage everyone to get stuck in however they can. And identity. So changes caused by dementia may lead to a person's sense of identity changing. And I think that happens to all of us actually as we move through life. And we work with the person we have in front of us in that very moment, which I think is all any of us can really ask for. Whoever comes in the room that day, that's who we're meeting essentially. That's just the tip of the iceberg about the programme itself. I'm here for the rest of the day if anyone has any more questions. Let's go to the next slide. Got some pictures from some of the things that we do.
So these are actually some of the these are from the creative evaluations that we've been doing. So it's such a nice project. I don't actually work for Museum Service, I'm an independent creative evaluator funded by Niche, which is fantastic. It's such a nice project to work with, and because it's so sensory and creative, as I was saying, I don't want to be kind of creating evaluation methods that are going to detract from that, also that are going to be difficult for people with different needs that are going to stress them out because they may struggle with writing and reading, and dementia can affect people in very different ways, and we're still learning and every group is different, so we were adapting as we went because it's so important that some people have their visual kind of sort of perceptions are challenged, and other people struggle to write, and you can't always tell when you first meet people, so it's just been very, very responsive. And I think I used to run an arts and heritage project in Deptford about 15 years ago, and not realising that someone couldn't read or write, so you just got to expect, and just, so people feel valued and not ashamed really of their capacities. So we've got a few different things. Actually, I don't know if the wellbeing.
I didn't include the wellbeing
So I don't know if anyone's heard of something called the Warwick and Edinburgh Wellbeing Scale. So it's nice to have. It's always like a balance and a mixed method approach. So we use the Warwick and Edinburgh Wellbeing Scale. I've actually changed it into a wheel to make it a bit nicer, a bit less kind of chart-based, and more kind of physical and A3 as well. But even though that was quite challenging, but I think it was also really nice to have the data, so it's always like a balance, because it's good for you to know kind of how well-being is effective, and it's also recognised nationally and used in the health service. But with these other things, this is another version with the teacups. It's a simpler way to design to measure well-being, very, very simple, involves colouring, so, and you do have like a limited amount of data that you can take from that.
Originally we were planning on using the Warwick and Edinburgh Wellbeing Scale every week, every of our 10 weeks. But we had quite immediate feedback from our participants that they didn't want to do that every week.
One lady in particular really hated it and didn't know,
and
which is great, that's what we want to know.
And as Holly has said, and the funding from Niche really allows us to explore different ways of evaluating. So we had the data from week 1. We quickly thought, okay, that this is affecting our participants' well-being, which is the opposite of what we want the sessions to do. We'll do it again in week 10, so we've got beginning and end data, and then the intervening weeks we decided Holly created these teacups for us. So we've been so lucky to be able to be flexible and do these like data-driven well-beings, and then you've used your artistry to create the embedded evaluations.
Saying about different, we actually did one. We talk about photo. This is actually the one at the bottom here. Is actually that's I think it's a different project. We did we did one at the end where we used code words to get people to express how they were feeling, because it's more like an embodied way, so I kind of modelled it for them, and they maybe worked in pairs to physically express how they were feeling, and sometimes that speaks 1,000 words. And there was one lady whose well-being on the kind of well-being scale was shown to be very, very low and had really risen, and I think her one was like a big hug of herself, and that just spoke 1,000 words really. I've got lots of different examples. We've got a tiny little little post box here, which is we were all doing about miniature in the sessions, all about miniature things. And then we had tiny envelopes that we put little letters in, posted through by the dolls that they'd made in the session, which is nice. So it's just making it really like that idea of being embedded and sensory and fun. You know, you're not going to think it's much better than but actually you get kind of quite a good amount of kind of feedback from that. It's also private, so we did like a mix of like collaborative, big scale stuff. It's also good to have somewhere that people can put in private. So someone said that they sort of would like to make sure it would like finish on time, which is really good to know that sort of stuff. You don't just need to know the big stuff, you need to know everything. We've got like a Christmas cracker, message in a bottle, because we're looking at pharmacies. Again, it's private. This sparked some really lovely conversations with a man who remembered like posting a bottle and sending it off into the sea with his dad, and actually was quite tearful. It was a really lovely moment. So, and it's sensory again, and touching and everything like that.
Yeah. Yes, I should have said that of our 10 sessions, each one is themed, and so these all link back to the theme. And Holly's already mentioned the mix between the collaborative evaluation, so this is textiles, where we kind of wove our thoughts together, but then the individual ones. So that's the chocolate session. We made chocolate wrappers,
So
the box of joy.
So they sort of wrap them up into little chocolates. I just have a lot of fun doing everything.
Yeah, and we're really excited. We've already kind of planned what we're going to do for this cohort. We've changed a few things, and yeah, excited to keep them.
And I think is the report on your web, is it available on your website?
Yes, yeah. So if anyone would like to see the interim evaluation report, isn't it? If you go onto if you type into Google niche at UEA, it'll take you straight to choice of choosing our website, and that's where we've got all our reports published, and Community Culture Club one, interim report is there as well.
And it goes through every kind of different week. But also, we've just been designing next year, so we're taking some of those. We're going to be changing it, so it gives us the opportunity to like try things out. And it's not one way to kind of do things. And yeah, and I think this year we're actually going to, rather than have a report, I'm also going to create a video, because to make it even more accessible. Because the report is great, but it's not, it's not going to reach everybody. So different ways to do it.
Thank you, and I think we're handing over to Esther now.
So, hello everybody, I'm finishing up. So I'm Esther Watts and I'm the Creative Health Associate for the South East. I'm employed by the National Centre for Creative Health, and I'm hosted by Sussex Integrated Care Board, and this is a project supported by the Arts Council. So the National Centre for Creative Health was started as a result of the all-party parliamentary group's inquiry into creative health. And so they decided that there had to be an organisation to help sort of advance good practice and to take this forward. And so we're particularly focused on health inequalities and working in partnership and place-based development. So creative health is that definition of creative activities which have benefits for our health and well-being. It's also creative approaches, and so that takes in the whole gamut of creativity, both from knitting and nattering groups to fine art, from theatre to gardening and cooking. So it really is this very wide, very broad church, creative health, and all the ways that we can find to engage people and to get their creative juices flowing. And so there's lots of different ways of using creative health within health and care, and also it's really useful for co-production, as you'll hear, about getting people to tell you what they want and how they need things to be, and also for education and workforce development. And so this can be used in many places. So it can be, during the pandemic, lots of creativity was being done at home by people, but also it can be used in community settings. We've heard great examples today from what's going on in the museums in Essex and Norfolk, in cultural institutions and heritage sites, and in healthcare settings. And we really believe, we know that creative health can contribute to the prevention of ill health I think prevention is a big space for us to think about. I want to just stop there for a second. Prevention of ill health, stop us having to get ill, but also the promotion of those healthy behaviours that once we may not have had healthy behaviours, but we need to develop some, and management of long-term conditions, which is another big one for me, because lots of us will be living with long-term conditions that we can't cure, but we can make sure that people can live their best lives. Just an aside, I've worked for the Alzheimer's Society for 8 years, so I've got a bit invested in that, how we make sure that people are living well. And treatment and recovery across the life course, so people will have major health events, and how can we help them get over those? And creative health is a really useful targeted intervention to help people living with specific conditions. There's a quote from the Creative Health Review, which is basically the Bible on creative health, if you ask me. So there was the original report came out in 2016, I believe, and there was an update in December 23. So that's on the National Centre for Creative Health website. You can take a look if you're not familiar with it. So thinking about the creative health and inequalities, I think I love this. I've stolen this from public health. I love this. It's an adaptation of the Bonte model, which is looking at health inequalities. So if you look at the risk conditions in that pink box, these are the risk conditions for health inequalities, and then that turns into those physiological risks like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, chronic stress, anxiety and depression, and then of course that turns into behavioural risks, so you're more likely to be engaging in these risks, these behaviours that will make you have a less healthy life as well. But we really can see that arts and creativity can absolutely address some of those psychosocial risks. So we've heard today about connection, and so addressing social isolation and increasing social support and networks. People's low self-esteem, taking that on that journey to making them feel better about finding meaning in their lives and their perceived power. And we've also, and taking away some of that self-blame, I think, because lots of people find it very difficult when they're in bad places to not blame themselves for it. So actually thinking about how creativity and creative health can really help support people to move on. So Historic England, so there's a real sort of tradition of historic heritage in health. Historic England and published research. I want to tell you the good news. The good news is that we're all going to benefit from heritage. So that there's this lovely piece of research that shows there's value for having day-to-day encounters with heritage. And also I was very proud this morning that I've been living just near Palmyra Square, where Alan Brady was showing you a picture of basically that place that I've been living for a year. And I was thinking, yes, I walk past that beautiful square to walk down to the sea quite a lot. And of course that's making me feel good about my life. I've been absolutely feeling that engagement with heritage, but this is something that we've all got the value of and we can all access. And it's lovely to hear about bringing more people to that. So some of the ways that heritage affects our health are that they can offer us a sense of, we can connect with our history. We've been hearing brilliant examples of this today. And belonging, providing that space for reflection and collaborative thought and growth, we're hearing as well. It can increase your cultural capital. And also immersing can stimulate those flow states where you're just so involved in what you're doing, you're not thinking about everything else that's going on. And so making sure that can help you physically, this can help you deal with some of those symptoms that you might be dealing with. It can lower blood pressure, it can help with symptoms of depression. So we're really looking at how heritage can create that health wealth. Now, when working with Historic England previously, so full disclosure, I used to work for the National Academy for Social Prescribing, so I've got some information here from them. But I know there have been lots of sort of brilliant pilots where they're actually supporting social prescribing, so people who are working within those clusters of GP surgeries to connect people living in the community that may have social isolation or other needs, so that they can help them with their health. So look, like 20% of doctors' doctor's appointments are not about health, they're actually about other social needs of people. So the social prescribers are employed to address that. So there are lots of brilliant pilot projects that you can look up to see about how that's working, but we've also been hearing about some lovely ones here. And we've heard some great information about what's going on in Southend today as well, so thanks very much for that. So do have a look, but there's some lovely work going on both with archaeology, with National Trust properties, with heritage, to really support people to be making that connection between heritage and health. And so here's just a few tiny examples. So I did read that somebody from the Restoration Trust was attending the, hello, look, you're up there. I thought, oh, that's good, they're here. So in Scotland, the Skylark 9 Recovery Trust is actually helping people sort of connect and actually giving them skills and training opportunities, which we're also hearing about some of those earlier. In Kirkham, the Health and Wellbeing Programme have developed community heritage projects. There's medical collections working with Salisbury Healthcare, and of course there's the, in terms of galleries, the National House of Memories at Liverpool Museums. So there's some brilliant work going on in this space. And that's as far as I'm connecting today with health, because I think the story is yet to be properly told. I think that there's loads more to come, and I want you to tell me the stories in the future. I just wanted to go back to just the programme that I'm working on and how that's going and what I'm looking at. So I just wanted to really ask you for your attention slightly, but also to think about some of those big questions. So there are 7 of us creative health associates, and we're all in different parts of the NHS in each NHS region. I'm based in Sussex, but my colleague Olivia is working in Norfolk and Waveney ICB, so we're all embedded. But we're looking to see, what are the conditions for creative health to be more integral to health? How can we make sure that that's being part of the story? So I think really thinking about the medical, taking in the whole person. So sometimes it's not just medicine that's going to help somebody get better, there's something else that they need. So thinking about how culture and creativity can benefit the lives of people in the ICB. So as a creative health associate in my area, I'm mapping creative health provision. So I'm basically doing a bit of an audit. I'm working my way around my ICB, talking to people and saying, how do you use art and culture for health and wellbeing? What do you do now? What could you do? What would you like to do? So thinking about how that works, how it's funded, who's in charge, how it's connected, and making sure that people are talking to each other. But I'm not just working in Sussex, I'm the South East Creative Health Associate, so I'm talking to people in Kent and Surrey, and also Bucks Ox Box. And so how can creative health support the priorities of the NHS? So we've heard, I've already mentioned the big word, prevention, but also how can we support them to keep, supporting people who are with existing health conditions or long-term health conditions. And also thinking about that, who's going to pay for it? I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Where are we going to get the money from? So we've got brilliant new sort of creative health guidance from the Arts Council, but also I'm talking to hospital charities, NHS charities together, those, community foundations, those voluntary and community sector organisations, and other philanthropy. And I'm also here to ask about academic research into this area, because of course we know this works, but we need more proof, we need more evidence, we need more people saying this works, why aren't we doing it? So that's my gift to you, is more research, please. And we're also I think we need to take a long-term view on how we support creative health in the long term, and that's something, I don't think just little old me is going to be answering that question. I'm working with lots of people and asking lots of people about their opinion. So when I first went into the ICB, I really went through, I thought, right, what's important to them? You've got to sort of deliver on their key drivers. And so I talked to them about major conditions, because there was a huge major condition strategy. So I've been through the different major conditions within the organisation. I've been talking to the different people who are in charge of those, when I can get hold of them, and then I do. But it's really about, what creative activities are you using to support these people? What could be done? So, for example, if you take the stroke, for me it seems really important that the people working within the stroke network, within the hospital, there's an amazing doctor from the Royal Berkshire Hospital who's commissioned Rosetta Life to do a performance with people who are in hospital just recovering from stroke. So actually, instead of sitting in their beds thinking, goodness me, I've just had this major life event, actually what they're thinking is, what can I do? How can I move my body? What are my ideas? What are my words? What are my thoughts? So absolutely turning on its head that experience of disability and focusing on the ability. And if you think about how creativity can do that for you, to start putting you back together, to start helping you reach what you can do, it's an amazing experience. So why aren't we doing more of that stuff in the stroke hospital when people are recovering? Why isn't there a national programme? Because they've actually said that they've examined people on the stroke ward, they're sitting by themselves for 60% of the time that they're in hospital. And frankly, I don't think that's good enough. They're also, I think it'd be really helpful to have creative activities to do with visitors. So if your experience of being able to speak is impeded by your stroke, perhaps it might be good to give your visitors a helpful way of interacting with you. So just thinking laterally about how we support people. It's just one small example. And what about when those patients leave hospital? How can we make sure that they're then being offered, are they being put together with some activities? Are they being offered a menu so that they can actually continue their journey of creativity and sort of sewing themselves back together? So what we know is that, at least 1 in 4 adults has at least 2 health conditions. We're not saying that creative health can cure those conditions, but what we can say is that we can and should do more to support people to manage living with them. So it's about that living well and what is a good life. And I think we all agree that being creative and having access to creativity is part of a good life. And it's something that can lift people's eyes beyond the current moment, and I think that's really important. So what does the NHS need from creative health? So here we are, we've got, I think, this is my small list. So it's a new ways of supporting health inequalities in a creative way to improve connection. So for example, what's creative health got to offer the black and minority maternal health inequalities within the system? How can we reach out to communities of pregnant women and engage them in a way that's not just come to the health centre? If the health centre, say in Crawley, in West Sussex, 10% of people aren't signed up to a GP. So you've got to be able to get people into your system through other ways. So there's a really brilliant organisation called Singing Mamas that's about to set up a group in there. So I also know that Public Health have got a brilliant it's almost like an NCT circle, so a mother's circle. But so we need to find and compare ways of, there'll be different ways, different pathways that support different people. So having those alternatives, trying out what works, we've got to be trying, haven't we? Because otherwise, as Colin said, if you don't do anything different, you won't get different outcomes. So I've already talked about support for some of the long-term conditions. I'm obviously really keen on people living with dementia to be able to support activity, but also the really important part of that, say, cardiovascular disease, the peer support and self-care of people who are engaging together and making sure that it's proven that people will look after themselves better if they're within a supportive group. So actually increasing that self-care is something that's high on the agenda of the NHS. So reducing social isolation and its toll on health, and reducing clinical unemployment. So it will come down to saving money, of course, because social prescribing and is already proving that if you support people to get what they need, and some of if they are more social, if they're not just at home being by themselves, then actually they are going to be feeling better, doing better, and they won't be turning up in A&E quite as often because they've got no support elsewhere. That's come out wrong, but you know what I mean. And then also making sure that we really do access those communities. So how can we use community groups that understand communities to be able to support more things for them to do, to come together, to be, sometimes I think of it as sort of health by stealth as well, so that we're being healthy, we're being together, and sometimes you might say, this person's come along, we've got a special guest to talk to you about X. Every now and then, I don't mean all the time, but it's like there's an offer of a before or after, that actually, that one-stop shop, we've got this group gathered here anyway. So we can really make sure that we're working well with the NHS to support some of those needs that they've got, which is they need to find the people that are not turning up at the GP surgery. So we're thinking about some of those NHS priorities, and there's massive gaps in research for creative health. Now, one of the things that they're really struggling with is smoking cessation, and I know that's an area we haven't really talked about before, but it's something that as a group, I talked to my creative health associates and I said, what would you think are the needs for research? So we've got smoking cessation, obesity, alcohol and drug dependency. We think that chronic pain is one of those big areas that creativity and creative activities is so supportive, and it's actually costing the NHS an absolute fortune, and then it's something that's really hard to solve. So actually engaging more people to support them and to, you know, get them to join groups to be creative and to support them to actually live their lives aside from that pain, get into that flow state is going to be really helpful to the NHS. We need to think of ways of getting some research on, more research on that, please. And once again, also those health inclusion groups, so those people who are experiencing multiple overlapping factors. So that's the drug and alcohol dependence, homelessness, vulnerable migrants, Gypsy, Roma and tribal communities, sex workers and people in contact with the care system, sorry, that word's not there, and victims of modern slavery. So thinking about how, and I know that there's loads of brilliant work going on in this area, we just need to be making sure that we are actually collating and researching and making sure we get that all together so that we can present it. So I also want to offer you some resources. So we've got the system-facing part is the Creative Health Toolkit. So this is for integrated care boards, it's for local systems. And there's some brilliant work around governance. There's loads of brilliant examples of the different areas. And also the cultural, creative health and wellbeing resources, the Creative Health Quality Framework. We've been talking about, I had people asking about evaluation today. I'm really glad to hear about the Warwick Edinburgh, because I've been having conversations about that. But also, how do we support creative practitioners to be delivering that evaluation in the way that Holly was talking about, that's really acceptable, that's really accessible, but it's also robust enough for us to offer to our health colleagues. My last little plug is sign up to the Creative Health News email, because I produce one fortnightly, monthly, whenever there's enough news to send out. But so it's just that roundup of what's going on. It's really useful for people, and it's really great to connect people with good practice, and also events and resources. So the things to think about here are, should be setting your work in the local context. So I think often this work has often been national, but making sure that you're looking at your local joint strategic needs assessment, making sure that your integrated health boards work. How are you making sure that you're working to place as well as to project? And I think that's something for practitioners, perhaps. There's some brilliant work in terms of strategy at Greater Manchester and other places. I wanted to give a plug for East Sussex Public Health paper, because that really was brilliant about setting themselves in that policy context. I recommended reading from that point of view, if that's your bag. And our last request is, when sharing news, do hashtag Creative Health. Please do tag National Centre for Creative Health and Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance, and join the NHS Creative Health Hub on NHS Futures. So although this is for NHS staff, people from other organisations, including voluntary sector, can join it, and you can give an example of what you're doing, but you can also find out the news, because when I'm not sending that email out anymore, that news will all still be there, so please do sign up. And do upload your illustrative examples to the Creative Health Toolkit. I've heard loads of examples since I've been there. I'm going to go and check that they're all on there, and I'm going to email you to tell you to put yourselves on if you're not. So here you go. And there's also a Healthcare Libraries Creative Health tag coming in the pipeline, so you will need to use that, but we'll be letting you know. That will be in the Creative Health News email and on the NHS Futures, so we'll let you know when that comes through, because that'd be really useful. And that is everything. I think that's the Creative Health Hub on the NHS Futures, just so you get to see it. And lastly, I want to say thank you for listening. Sorry to